All of this is very odd, as is the fact that once he was taken down by the Secret Service, who did react very quickly to their credit, they then allowed him to stand back up, and they put a female agent in front of him who was clearly a lot shorter than he was, thereby exposing his whole head and upper torso to potentially a shot from another shooter had there been one. Rather than doing what they did with Reagan, for example, when they rushed him straight into the limo and got rid of him and took him to hospital. None of this makes sense to me. It really is an inexplicable chain of events that Donald Trump, who is, one of the most threatened people in American public life, who's been president and is likely to be again, is at a public presidential rally months before an election, and any of that chain of events is able to happen.
Piers, we were a half an inch away from civil war. We were a head not turning this way from a civil war. We've all seen the videos.
Patrick Bet-David went on Piers Morgan Uncensored to discuss many different topics, but he talked about some very, very interesting and scary things to Piers Morgan whenever it comes to the state of the country, what happened with the Trump assassination, who was really trying to get Trump, and what could happen if, if the bullet would have not missed, or what could happen if a bullet in the future doesn't miss for either side. What happens to the left? What happens to Joe Biden? What happens to Donald Trump? They talk about all these different things, and Patrick Bet-David, once again, does a great job. I had been someone who was kind of skeptical of Patrick Bet-David for a while, but lately he's been saying a lot of things that I really, really agree with, number one, but number two, just respect, because a lot of people in this conservative media space, they love to just collect the money, pander to a certain audience, not say anything that's too controversial, not say anything that's too risky, but pander to an audience and collect checks. Patrick Bet-David is saying a lot of things that gets my respect, that's earning my respect, because he's saying things that are unpopular in the conservative spaces to say, but they're the obvious truth. They're the uncomfortable truths. And in this video here with Patrick Bet-David and Piers Morgan, he does that same thing. Let's get into this clip of Patrick Bet-David dropping bombshells on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got into this with Cenk Uygur yesterday, where he got very agitated when I said I found what happened very odd. And he immediately started lambasting me as a conspiracy theorist and saying the Secret Service were in on it and all this kind of thing. I said, no, I'm not saying any of those things. Here's what I'm saying very clearly. It is incredibly strange to me and inexplicable that a 20-year-old kid with an AR-15 can clamber onto the roof in full view of the public, who start alerting authorities as much as 2 minutes before he fires this gun, and then gets to the perfect vantage point to shoot Donald Trump from 150 meters. And the fact he's able to let off 8 rounds, even with snipers all apparently looking at him at the time. Again, all of this is very odd, as is the fact that once he was taken down by the Secret Service, who did react very quickly to their credit, they then allowed him to stand back up, and they put a female agent in front of him who was clearly a lot shorter than he was, thereby exposing his whole head and upper torso to potentially a shot from another shooter had there been one. Rather than doing what they did with Reagan, for example, when they rushed him straight into the limo and got rid of him and took him to hospital. None of this makes sense to me. It really is an inexplicable chain of events that Donald Trump, who is, one of the most threatened people in American public life, who's been president and is likely to be again, is at a public presidential rally months before an election, and any of that chain of events is able to happen.
Piers, we were a half an inch away from civil war. We were a head not turning this way from a civil war. We've all seen the videos. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with questioning anything. One of the videos we showed is a reporter going around in California asking people, what do you think about the assassination attempt on the president? And everybody this person asked in California, everybody said, oh, it was a setup.
Well, we actually, I'll tell you what, Patrick, let me stop you, because we actually have that. Let me play that so that viewers know what you're talking about.
Sure, go for it.
Oh, it's a false flag.
False flag.
Yeah, false flag.
Somebody died and 2 people injured. What do you think about that?
False flag.
False flag.
I thought it was magnificent.
To be fair to these people, I also thought it was very weird in the moment as soon as it happened. And I think we're also very brainwashed and programmed now, because we've been lied to so many times by the government, to think that everything is a false flag, think that everything has some other, ulterior motives, with them showing us these certain things. Whenever it first happened, I found it weird too, the way that the Secret Service allowed Trump to stop to get a marketing moment out whenever there's somebody shooting off rounds into the crowd trying to hit Donald Trump, who has already been hit by a bullet, by the way. Who knows how bad that wound could have been? You know, we don't know. Like, in the heat of the moment, they're not like, oh, look, it's just a little nick on his ear. They're like, oh shit, Donald Trump just got hit by a bullet. Let me get him to the hospital because I see blood coming out of him. Instead, they let him stop and fist pump at the crowd and say, fight, fight, you know, without pushing him off the stage. I mean, it's 8 versus 1, and Donald Trump doesn't seem like he's in the best shape ever. They could probably overpower him and say, no, man, let's get out of here. There's somebody shooting you with bullets. So I was like, why did they let him do that? Like, this whole thing does feel weird. And I told my friends, I was talking to them, and I was like, if nobody else in the crowd got hit and died, I would probably say that this was staged. And then if, you know, we found out, like, you know, not only did the shooter get shot and we saw those pictures, but also innocent people in the crowd got hit. One guy did end up dying. So now I'm kind of like, yeah, it's probably not faked. You know, this was probably a real assassination attempt, which then brings in other things into question. How do they allow, like Piers Morgan said to Patrick Bet-David there, how do they allow a 20-year-old to get that good of a shot at Donald Trump? How does that happen? And also, they were alerted over and over again. It's valid questions. Now, these people in California, they're probably brainwashed to just think everything Trump does is everything that happens that could possibly benefit Trump, because don't get it twisted, this assassination attempt not working, it's benefiting Trump. You know, it's definitely benefiting Trump and his chances of getting elected. Anything that benefits Trump is probably a false flag. You know, it's a lie and everything like that. So different reasoning, but I can see why someone would think that this is staged or a false flag.
Magnificently staged. It was professionally done.
Wait. Staged by who?
Oh, by Mr. Trump, of course.
I think this whole thing is staged.
No.
Please don't.
No.
We're so anti-Trump. I don't even want to.
Was it a bad thing, though? Was it a bad thing? Would you condemn it?
Oh, that he got shot at? Of course. Yeah, was it staged? Probably.
One person died in the crowd, 2 critically injured. What happened there?
Small price. It wouldn't matter to Trump. Do you think he cares if people die for him to be elected? Put a little scratch on his ear, threw a little blood on his face.
Now, so you think that they planned from 130 yards away to shoot off the corner of his ear?
And they never shot off the corner of his ear. That was all done by the people hanging around him.
What about the people that died what about the father that died in the stand, as well as the others that were critically injured?
I don't know. I can't tell.
What would you say our reasoning is for saying that, or we have no reasoning?
I think it's a lot more likely. Obviously, this is just, you know, conspiracy. I'm just a wild conspiracy theorist, you know. Don't take anything that I'm saying seriously here. I don't think Trump, just personal opinion, I don't think Trump would sacrifice a couple of his own supporters, possibly more, in order to have this promotional moment. I don't think he needed that to win the election if all things are fair during this next election. I don't think he needed that to win. He was heavily favored before. So I don't think he would do that. I do think that the government would do that, or the people who are really running the world would do that in order to take Donald Trump out, though, because that's never stopped them before. And that's never stopped them from hurting American citizens in the past either. Not just, you know, in foreign countries, but, you know, we think about 9/11 and JFK, all these things. The U.S. had hands in all of these things, you know. So it's never stopped them before, hurting innocent Americans. So I think that that's a lot more likely.
Just the feeling.
If Trump is involved, it's a fraud.
I mean, it's staggering to me to hear that. And yet I had first-hand experience in the UK from various people that I encountered within 24 hours of what happened, immediately saying to me, because they recognized me and knew I'd been covering this, they said, this thing's staged, right? This was all set up. And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course it wasn't set up. But trying to make them understand it was real was pretty much impossible.
But here's what I don't have a problem with. I don't have a problem with them saying that. I'm okay with that, and put that as a possibility that it was staged. Now, the possibility of being staged may be 0.1%, but we ought to put it out there as maybe this is possibility. Fine, give your argument. But at the same time, I have a lot of questions just like you do. The story that came out with the second shooter, the story that came out with the FBI power washing all the stuff on the top of the building after the shooter was gone, and maybe they don't have any residual effects of the shots fired. Maybe there's no residual effects. That's not a hard thing for us to find. They found the phone. You mean to tell me you didn't find anything in the phone on what was being said? We can't expect why the Secret Service, when I go online and I Google President Joe Biden's Secret Service team, and go to images. Try to find one female that's one of his, you will not be able to find it. I went online and looked at all his team. Everybody is a white male. I thought President Biden was about DEI and, underrepresented. How come he doesn't have a single person that's transgender or lesbian, gay? How come he doesn't have somebody from that community representing him? And forget about that. Why is it that every one of his Secret Service members are white male, let alone for Trump, when they're being pushed into it? 3, 4, 5 of them were women. This is an area where DEI is being exposed in ways that we just got a story yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have a problem with women in the Secret Service. They just have to be as good as the men, right? And they have to be up to the job. What was pretty horrifying was the agent that you saw, who's unfortunately for her gone viral, who can't even put a gun in a holster in that environment.
And if you enjoy content like this, and make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, it really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
You're like, how on earth have you got into the Secret Service? This is like supposed to be the absolute elite of the elite of protection people in the world, and she can't put a gun in a holster twice as she's trying to protect a president who's just been shot.
But think about it from this way. Many, many years ago, when I'm running an office and I had 100 agents that are selling insurance, and one of my agents would come in and say, I have a family member that wants me, got a very complicated financial situation. Their net worth is 10 million. Can you have somebody come and sit down with them? I would choose who I would send to go meet with the family that is the biggest expert in our office that knows how to handle a situation like that, right? I choose how to match up the right agent advisor with the right appointment. The director of Secret Service has the ability to match up the best agents who are the most experienced one against the person that's attracting the biggest audience, which is President Trump. You ought to send the right people to protect. Why did you not? By the way, this is the same person that in 2022, when asked about the text exchange between the Bidens during J6, all of a sudden she's like, oh, the text exchange disappeared. We lost it. But look, we're not trying to do anything, that's negative, or we're not trying to hide anything from the public. So I have a very hard time. And every one of these questions need to be asked, because it's a little bit disturbing when all these stories are coming up. By the way, specifically when? So let's actually think like the devil's advocate. Let's actually think if they were trying to do something, something negative or something that, manipulative to kind of hurt the president. So the judge comes out and says, we're going to pick what's going to happen to the president a few days before RNC, July 11th. Okay, no problem. They changed the dates. No problem. The assassination attempt is when? When is the RNC? What did they want to do? Did they want there to be shambles before the RNC? Did they want right now at the RNC where the energy is high, the confidence is high with who they have chosen as their nominee, which is Trump, and you see a unification coming up. Nikki Haley got up there. DeSantis got up there. Vivek got up there. Elon Musk just said he's going to give $45 million a month to a super PAC before now and the end of the year. Bunch of billionaires are coming out there. Conversations with a Jamie Dimon, conversations with an RFK, the video that was leaked. You know how bad this is for the DNC? If the same person, the same folks that are saying this was staged, we ought to also ask, was this intentional to do it right before the RNC? That question should also be on the table.
I just think all questions are perfectly legitimate when we know so little answers. There's no motive has been established.
I have to agree. It's very obvious those people that were interviewed by James Klug in California, I mean, they're brainwashed, right? No matter what, they're going to say the same thing. It's always the most negative answer for Trump as possible. But like I said earlier, we've been lied to so many times. We've seen crazier things than this, especially come out retroactively, where the things that the U.S. has done in the past, the three-letter agencies, the government, the people who are above the government, the things that they've done and that have been declassified that we know now that they've done in the past, it's absolutely nuts. So I don't think there is anything that's too crazy to ask. I don't think there's a question about what could be a false flag that's too crazy to ask. I don't think now that I saw that people have died and stuff in the crowd, I don't think that this was staged by Trump, but I do think this could have been put on by someone working for the government, maybe somebody who is Trump's political opponent. Somebody like that, I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case. Let me know in the comments, what do you think was going on? Do you agree with Patrick Bet-David and Piers Morgan that this was just a legitimate 20-year-old who somehow got access to a roof? Or do you think this could be staged by the Trump administration? Do you think this could be somebody from within the government trying to take out Trump? What do you think in the comments is going on with this whole situation? Let me know what you thought about what Patrick Bet David and Piers Morgan were saying here on Piers Morgan Uncensored.